What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so I saw this on Facebook, so I looked it up, and apparently Kevin Durant said something, or he reiterated a position that he had from 3 years ago. Now, it was actually 3 years ago when he said that he thought that Kyrie Irving, who I guess at the time he was forging a relationship with, right? He thought that Kyrie Irving was a more skilled player than Allen Iverson. And a lot of people had an issue with that. And, he never backed down from that, and he still feels that way. And he reiterated that position recently in an interview. But he's respectful of AI, and he thinks that AI is a great player. And when you think about it, for him to say that, that's not him dissing AI, because that's high praise. So at the end of the day, it's not like he's saying something ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? We're talking about Kyrie Irving, who, if you've watched him play, is one of the most skilled basketball players we've ever witnessed. So when I read him say that, it's not like one of these ridiculous statements where, you might see someone say, "Hey, look, man, this might just be a hot take on my part, but to me, I think Kadari was on the low, one of the top big men in the 90s, man. You know what I'm saying? I think he actually gives Shaq a run." Man, shut your stupid ass the fuck up. No disrespect to Kadari, may he rest in peace. But there's nothing ridiculous like that, okay? No. Honestly, I know where Kevin Durant's coming from, and I actually agree. Even though I always get accused of capping for the 90s, and you know what I'm saying, I'm living in the past, and I'm a LeBron hater and all this type stuff. If you actually listen to what I say on this channel, and you're fair, and you're honest, I don't know how you could say I'm capping. To me, capping is when you go out of your way to font over or to take up for an error or a person. I don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I grew up in the 90s. I have a soft spot in my heart for that era. Just like anybody that's young today, you have a soft spot in your heart for this era. And the next generation, the 2040s, right? They're going to start shitting on this era. And you're going to take offense to it. Just like the people before me took offense to us when we would target people from the 70s. It's a cycle. And then you're going to say, you know what, I understand why they were doing that. Because how dare you shit on my era unnecessarily. But what I won't do, or at least I won't do anymore, is shit on other people just to prop up a guy. And that argument, to me, Kevin Durant's not shitting on Allen Iverson. Okay? To me, look, first of all, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are teammates. They're friends. Of course he's going to compliment his friend. And to me, that's complimenting Kyrie Irving. And to me, when Kevin Durant's talking about skills, he's probably talking about ball handling and shooting. And if anybody's really honest with themselves, Allen Iverson is no match for Kyrie Irving when it comes to those departments, especially shooting. Now, I do still believe that Allen Iverson had the greatest handles, the greatest crossover I've ever seen. To me, it's, you know what I'm saying, Allen Iverson, Tim Hardaway, and then maybe Kyrie. Maybe, in that order. But actual ball handling, I got to give it to Kyrie Irving. I have to give it to Irving. I mean, we've seen a progression in overall skills in basketball today. as far as ball handling and things of that nature. Yeah. So it's not surprising that we would see a guy like Kyrie Irving develop. And the thing about it, 20 years from now, we're going to see a guy that is going to take what Kyrie Irving does and improve on it further. That's the evolution of basketball. Allen Iverson, as great a ball handler as he was, he would tell you that basketball was his secondary sport and that football was his first sport, and that he was good enough in high school, at least the way that the legend goes, the legend of Bubba Chuck, that he would have been good enough to be in the NFL. Now, I don't know if he'd been big enough to be a successful NFL quarterback, or that he'd been big enough anyway, because he was only 6 feet, 165 pounds. But apparently, you know what I'm saying, he was more of a phenom in football than basketball. But I'll get to that in a moment. Iverson is no match for Kyrie when it comes to shooting. Okay, he's not. From the mid-range perimeter outward, it's not really much of a match. It's not. Allen Iverson for his career was 42.5% from the floor. And you have to take into account that AI was more of a slasher. So he had a lot more buckets on the inside in the paint rather than just all out distributed on the outside. Kyrie is more of a mid-range and outside three-point shooter, and the field goal percentage is not even close. You get what I'm going at? Like, Kyrie does take it to the basket on occasion, but he's more of a mid-range and outside guy, whereas AI in his prime, he would score the mid-range a lot, don't get me wrong, but he took it to the cup more than Kyrie Irving. But despite that, there's a substantial difference in career field goal percentage. AI, 42.5%, Kyrie Irving, 46.6%. That's a tremendous difference. Some people are like, well, it's only 4%. No, that's a tremendous difference. Three-point shooting, no contest. AI was not really a three-point shooter. Yeah, he had certain games where he would hit them. You know, when he got into a rhythm, he might hit 6, 7, 8 threes, 9 threes. I've seen him. For one night, he would shoot like he's Kyrie Irving, right? But more often than not, AI would go 1 of 8, 2 of 9, if he shot a lot of them. But for the most part, he might go 0 for 3, 0 for 4, 0 for 5, 1 for 5. And for his career, he was 31% from three-point range. Kyrie Irving, on the other hand, 39% from three-point range. Very high. Okay. Free throw percentage, Iverson was 79%. That's really good. But Kyrie's at 87, close to 88%. And to me, once you get to that range of 88% and better, you're now an elite shooter. You know, when you look at the list of people who shot 88% and higher, you see the Steph Currys, you see Steve Nash, you see Mark Price, you see Peja Stojakovic, you see Larry Bird, you see Ray Allen, you see Chauncey Billups, you see Calvin Murphy, you'll see Chris Mullin, you'll see, I can go on and on. You know what I'm saying? You see these lists of guys who were all tremendous outside shooters, and just tremendous shooters in general. And Kyrie is getting into that territory. In fact, over the last couple of years, I believe Kyrie is around 40% from three-point range and has shot 48 to 49% from the floor. So from those two areas, plus I would say clutch, Kyrie Irving had the biggest shot in the history of the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's not close. In those three categories. AI, had some big buckets in his career. But I've also seen him miss some shots. I've seen him miss some big shots. Kyrie Irving made the biggest shot in the history of the Cleveland Cavaliers organization. You know, the extreme LeBron fans want you to forget about that shot and to focus on LeBron's block, but that shot sealed the deal for the Cavaliers. Now, having said all these things, right, and I do believe he's more skilled than AI, I still wouldn't rank him ahead of AI. Even with the championship ring, I wouldn't rank him ahead of AI. And why is that? Well, look, the reason why I wouldn't is because I don't think he's as consistent a basketball player as Allen Iverson. He has had to deal with injuries. And he's had to deal with injuries. AI, for the most part, was not saying he didn't have injuries, but I think AI was more willing to play with injuries, whereas Kyrie, you know, he will err on the side of caution. Now, I'm not saying his injuries weren't legitimate. He's had to have surgery. AI was just a different type of guy. You know what I'm saying? Like AI, there's certain things that you can't teach, you can't work on. They're born in you. They're instilled in you. There are some people that can play through pain, and they want to play through pain. They want to get out there. Some people, they're not comfortable playing in pain. You know what I'm saying? Some people, I need a couple of games off. AI, for the most part, if it's something that he could play through in those days, especially. Now, look, some of it's a little bit of culture. These players are investments. Teams kind of don't want these guys to go out there and fuck something up. Back then, you take an injection, you go out there and play. You know what I'm saying? Your fucking back is hurting, go out there and take an injection. You're numb, go out there and play. That's kind of was a little bit still that culture back then. But the point is, AI had heart, and he was known for that. That's the respect that AI garnered throughout the league, even though he was only 6 feet tall. You know what I'm saying? Kyrie's not a huge guy, but AI was only 6 feet, 160 pounds, and he was doing what he was doing. Really, to be honest with you, AI is really only 5'11" in bare feet. He's only fucking 5'11". 5'11", and he was doing what he was doing out there. Kyrie is a better shooter, but I would say that Iverson was the better scorer. Kyrie, you know what I'm saying, has more in his arsenal, I guess. But the difference between the two is this. Kyrie can be offensive minded, and we've seen him, you know, put on great individual performances. But there are also games where he's only shot the ball 10, 11, 12 times. He's not always aggressive offensively. People like Iverson and Jordan and Kobe and Jerry West, Wilt, his prime, they were offensively aggressive, and they put out James Harden. You know, even though I don't like to put him with those guys, they are offensively aggressive, and they go out there every single night. You know what I'm saying? And that is why AI, for his career, averaged almost 27 points a game during the regular season, and during the playoffs, he has the second highest scoring average, only behind Michael Jordan. That's not by design. That's because of desire, and that was because he was determined to go out there and perform every night. He wasn't the greatest shooter. No, he wasn't. But you know what I'm saying? He went out there, and he put it out there every night. You know what I'm saying? He gave it his all. So he was a more determined scorer, I would say, than Kyrie Irving. What else would I say? Rebounding is pretty even. Might be a slight edge to AI because of the size difference, but it's pretty even. Playmaking, they're both not technically point guards, I guess. They're not really point guards per se. They're both shooting guards, just a little bit on the smaller side. I would give the edge to AI only because of the fact that for the first couple of years in his career, he actually was playing the point guard position opposite, Jerry Stackhouse. And I think the overall numbers favor him as far as like assists and whatnot. So I would give the edge to AI. Defense, neither one of these guys are great defensively, but Iverson was, a threat in the passing lanes because of his quickness. He did lead the league in steals 3 times. So I guess you would give the edge to AI, but neither one of these guys are known for defense. Athleticism, definite edge to Allen Iverson. People will forget that AI, when he came into the league, he had an almost 40-inch vertical leap. Now, he didn't dunk much because that was an era where, the Giants still roamed. The dinosaurs still roamed down the paint. So unless it was some type of fast break situation where he had a breakaway dunk or something like that, he would dunk it. But, AI for the most part didn't dunk a lot. But he was definitely known for his quickness, his speed, and his athleticism. Like I said, he was earlier. He was known for being a football player. That was his thing when he was in high school. Was how great a football player he was. So, overall, you look at his longevity. I would put AI still ahead of him. There have been some questions about Kyrie Irving's leadership ability. When Kyrie Irving was first drafted, the first couple of years he was there in Cleveland before LeBron came back. Look, they were a pretty bad team. They had terrible records, like 34-48, maybe like 29-53 or something like that. 35-47, something like that. 33-49, something. They were not a good team. And the only reason why they won some of those games was because of Kyrie Irving. So that really, to me, was more on management than anything else. The same could be said with Allen Iverson when he first was drafted by the Sixers. When he got there, they were at the nadir of their existence. The Sixers had once been a very proud franchise. Back all the way to when they was in their Syracuse National days during the 40s and 50s. All right. They won a championship, I believe, in 55, the Syracuse Nationals. Sometimes I mix up the 51 championship with the 55 championship. The 51 championship, I believe, was the Rochester Royals, who became the Cincinnati Royals, who became the Kansas City Omaha Kings, who are now the Sacramento Kings. I mix them up sometimes with that championship. But I think they won a championship in 55. Of course, they won a championship in 67, one of the greatest teams ever. And then, of course, 83. So that was always a proud franchise. But only the management, they just fucked that organization up in the late 80s. And then Charles Barkley left out of frustration. And they were terrible. And they were going nowhere. And they were the laughingstock of the Eastern Conference. And then, comes Allen Iverson. And, management sees this talent that was raw, but it was there. And AI was just eating up the league when he first got, drafted. Both of them rookie of the years. And they were on terrible teams. But the difference is this. LeBron came back. The guy who was the best player of the last decade is still probably the best player today until proven otherwise. He came back, and they had a 3-year run to the NBA Finals. AI never had the benefit of playing with a player like LeBron James or Kevin Durant. I mean, when everything is said and done, LeBron James may go down as the consensus GOAT. All right, let's be honest, okay? We got to be honest. He may go down as the consensus GOAT. Kevin Durant, when everything is said and done, may go down as a top 10 all-time player. Let's be honest. Allen Iverson's never had the benefit of playing with anybody like that, especially for his prime. He did play with Carmelo Anthony for a while, but their games didn't mesh with each other. High usage, volume scores. Their games didn't really mesh with one another. Iverson never had the benefit of playing with somebody that his game would mesh with his. You know, for instance, he never got to play with. I mean, who's the best player he ever played with in his prime? I guess Mutombo. You know, he never got to play with a guy with comparable ability. He never got to play with a Grant Hill in that era. He never got to play with, you know, a Ray Allen, or even Ray Allen's not as dynamic as Kevin Durant. So it's hard to compare him to anybody in that era. But he never got to play with a guy like that. He never got to play with a Kobe Bryant. You feel me? He never got to play with anybody of that magnitude. So you wonder if he did play with somebody like that, and he was willing to alter his game, maybe it would be different. But they did build a team around AI. They did have that magical 2001 run. And that's what he'll be remembered for, you know. And also the cultural impact is not even close. A lot of young people, they don't quite understand like what I mean about his cultural impact. Like, all I'll tell them is this. Look at an NBA game from 1995, right? And look at the players. And look at how they're dressed. Like, especially pregame. Look at how they're dressed. Look at how they talk in interviews. Just look at the players. And then fast forward to 1999. Post-Jordan, he's out of there. You know, a lot of the older guys are gone. Look at 1999, 2000, and look at the players then. Look at how you'll see more tattoos. You'll see more baggy shorts. You'll see more cornrows or the blown out afros. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know what I'm talking about. That era. You know what I'm saying? And that was because of the influence of Allen Iverson. He was a cultural phenomenon. You know what I'm saying? He scared the shit out of white folks. He was persona non grata when it came to certain people in our country. But in the black community, he was beloved. Absolutely beloved. He had more impact on the culture of basketball than anybody with the possible exception of Michael Jordan. Probably Michael Jordan, that's it. So when you take those into account, I couldn't put him over AI because of that. But from a skill standpoint, Kevin Durant is 100% correct. But you know what? People aren't going to listen to this video. They're going to read my title, and they're going to make comments based upon that, because people don't actually fucking listen to what you got to say. But tell me what you guys think, the ones who actually listen to the goddamn video.